So welcome back. The recent uptick in foodborne illnesses across the country has now been classified as a national disaster. At least 890 incidents of foodborne illnesses have been reported over the last 3 months, with 22 children losing their lives. Let's now bring in the Cooperative Minister, Velenkosini Hlabisa, for more on this latest development. Minister, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Minister, before we go into the difference between declaration as well as classification, just a quick one on the number of cases that you are currently looking at. So with the death of Siyabonga Mnisi from Soweto yesterday, the confirmation coming through, the 5-year-old, what does this bring the total number of deaths to in this particular period that you're looking at?
Good morning, Aldrin, and the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Very unfortunately, Aldrin, the number now amounts to 26 children, because on record we had 25. With the addition of that young child, it makes 26. It makes 26.
Sure. And
yes.
How do you feel about this, Minister?
It is very sad, Aldrin, as the President expressed his sadness and condolences to the families. It is very sad and very unfortunate. Unfortunately, when a disaster strikes, there are casualties that happen in terms of human souls being lost, as the case has happened with the foodborne illnesses.
Yeah, but certainly something that could have been prevented. If you look, for instance, at the Sowetan, the front page story here, focusing on the story of Siyabonga, part of their article is that they speak to a ward councillor, Brenda Dami, who says that residents informed her that they tried twice in 3 weeks to close the Spaza shop in the wake of children dying of suspected food poisoning after eating snacks bought at Spaza shops. But that didn't happen, of course. The shop still continued to operate. And now we have this particular disaster.
Aldrin, really we are very sympathetic and we understand the feelings, which is our feelings and frustration as a community. But to shut down or to close a Spaza shop, you must have a direct link between that Spaza shop and a person who deceased. Now, the call is general throughout now that close down the Spaza shops. They will take you to court, and the court will say, can you prove? And you will not be able to table evidence. That is why we are trying to work faster, as we gave an ultimatum of 21 days. Every Spaza shop must be registered, and even before that, inspections are being done through the standard bylaws, which we gazetted as a mitigating factor within the period that we have given. After 21 days, a Spaza shop that is not registered will be closed down. Even if a person can take the government to court, we will stand by the announcement that we made, because it was a process. But simply closing down is difficult until you make a direct and proved link between the deceased and that Spaza shop.
Yeah, so is that the reason why even the shops that are allegedly linked to the incidents in Naledi are still not closed?
That is the reason, Aldrin, because if you can close it, as I said, a person will wake up the following day and go to court. The court will want a direct link that you must prove that the child bought the snacks in this shop and he ate the snacks and died. If you can't prove that, the shop will say you are general. You do not have sufficient proof. The only road to close those shops, people must register. They must meet the requirement. If they don't meet the requirement, for instance, they are foreign nationals, they don't have the documentation, you will shut down the shop. Okay. And the shop, the Spaza shop cannot be registered by Hlabisa, and Hlabisa give it to someone else to operate. If Hlabisa registers a Spaza shop, he must work and operate in that Spaza shop. If he decides to give it to somebody else, he must go back to the municipality and register who is the person to run the Spaza shop and what are the documentation of that particular person. So the fronting is not going to work.
Okay, let's now go to the classification of a natural disaster, national disaster. What does this mean? Because there's a difference, I understand, between the classification as well as the declaration. What happens up until we get to declaration?
Let me start with the classification, Aldrin. Classification means to categorize. If the illness occurs in a local area, you classify it as a local disaster. If it is at a provincial level, you classify a provincial disaster. And if it is across provinces, it becomes a national disaster in terms of classification. Classification means you activate departments, all systems to start programs of protecting people, giving support. But if you have classified the illness and it goes beyond ordinary responses, it becomes a crisis. You need an extraordinary response. For instance, Aldrin, you need soldiers to be on the road. You need facilities where you are going to keep people as a result of a disaster. Then you make a declaration. It goes beyond a classification. And you must have regulations and you must be prepared. Some people will challenge you because classification will result into a disruption of life. There will be some restrictions. You might have to activate soldiers, and they come with stringent regulation. Some people will take you to court. You must demonstrate in court why did you declare a declaration beyond the classification. That is the process we are doing now. We are working on the regulations. We are looking at the scenario on the ground to prepare our case that should things go beyond the ordinary response, they need more than what we are doing. Police are overwhelmed. You need soldiers. You need to escalate into a declaration.
Okay. What's the threshold to determine whether or not you should be going into declaration mode?
When the disaster goes beyond the ordinary response.
What does that mean?
Because what it means, Aldrin, the threshold, I cannot give that you need so many number because number may not work. Like, for instance, if there can be an uprising, people wanting to take law into their hands, and you can see all the systems in place are not sufficient to respond, the disaster has complicated and became more than ordinary, then you must escalate to a declaration because you need to mobilize extra resources and give stringent regulations how to deal with the situation on the ground. Yeah. But I must assure you, Aldrin, and the people of South Africa, we are observing the situation very closely. We are activating all systems under classification. Our people are on the ground. We are very vigilant to ensure that we do not disrupt life, but also, if need be, the upgrade will be done into a declaration level, is that it involves a number of things financially as well as the institutions in terms of government.
Yeah. Considering that you also have SAPS as well as the intelligence that are part of this interministerial body, what information are you receiving about these foodborne illnesses? Is it and here's the thing about it, Minister, that I'm struggling with a bit, is that the Premier of the KZN has said that as far as they are concerned, these cases are coming from foreign-owned shops, right? The cases are coming from foreign-owned shops. Does this mean that there is actually a mastermind behind this? What is your intelligence telling you about what is playing out?
Aldrin, I will not speak on the information of the intelligence because rightly you will know it's a classified information, whatever information you get there. But in terms of these foodborne illnesses, what is clear is that at a higher degree is negligence. There is a pesticide that is out there. It is sold by ordinary women, ordinary men in the taxi rank, and people use it to kill rats. Unfortunately, this pesticide, sometimes it is taken by rats running on top of food and infect food, and eventually, when you sell that food, it will affect children. In some Spaza shop, there are cats, ikati, that sleep inside the Spaza shop in order to deal with rats. And if you put rat eggs, and the cat will run over the rat eggs, run over the food that is not properly packed. When you pack that food using your hands, having not properly washed them, you will infect the food that you will sell, and children will be easily affected because they are still young in terms of resistance. So now, this is a matter of cleanliness. That is why we say there will be conditions. No one will sleep in the Spaza shop or any retailer. No one will use one place, sleep, you bath there, you cook there, you sleep with a cat, sometimes with a dog, because it's your security. If we can deal with these health matters, we will clear any deliberate action other than a health hazard. That is why today we are presenting to Cabinet the proposal for the employment of extra environmental health inspectors to give support over and above SAPS and all other people who are on the ground as we speak.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs there, Velenkosini Hlabisa, on some of the interventions to stop some of these foodborne illnesses and cases that we're seeing coming out of various Spaza shops. That's all we have for this hour. More news and more views